You want me to talk about fear, about the schemer, about true unadulterated evil? Well, listen close. Empty your heart and mind. Let's discuss the Ultroloth. Yes, I agree. Fear the Bartezu. They are cold and cunning disciplinarians. Fear the Tanari. They are brutal, bloodthirsty killers. But most of all, fear the Yugoloths. They are masks of mystery, and no matter how many layers of skin you peel away, you will never know how many still lie between you and the true face. Spawned on the grey waste, the very heart of evil, and nourished on Gehenna, the very forge of unforgiving brutality. The Yugoloth race is notorious for the ill ends to which it applies its manipulative genius. Pray that their plans, whatever they may be, never come to fruition. It's easy to see why these fiends arrogantly consider themselves the only true planar fiends. Purged of the twin strains of law and chaos, they draw their reinforcements from the essence of the lower planes themselves. It's said that, as soon as a Yugoloth dies, another is reborn, spat out as a Mesoloth near the Wasting Tower on the Grey Waste, or near the Tower of the Arcanoloths on Gehenna. Legends say that these two spires, and perhaps another tower, locked away from mortal knowledge, focus the energies of the lower planes, attracting the power of evil and harnessing it for their kind. That implies, dear reader, that there are at least a certain number of Yugoloths in existence. I say at least because the fiends can also breed naturally, which increases their population. Supposedly, only the destruction of one of the fiend's towers can render the Loths dead for any significant length of time. True? False? Dear me, who can say? But it is true that the Yugoloths claim to have rid themselves of law and chaos, and to have driven these strains into larvae that would later evolve into the Bartezu and Tanarari. Scholars who believe this claim, what a notion, have subsequently theorized that these fiends destroyed their own living spark when they drained the two ethical extremes from their spirits. That's why, some say, the fiends can't draw new recruits from larvae, and why they've been forced to evolve their reinforcements from the planes. Those who lurk in the underground of fiendish knowledge feel that while the purge may have eliminated the true spirit from the Yugoloths, it has ensured that their race is filled with the essence of evil. Now all they have to do is keep the popular perceptions of evil from changing. For if the basic notions change, the very stuff of the lower planes will change, and that could spell the end of all of the Yugoloths' plans. In short, Yugoloths are the worst kind of fanatics, the sort who tenaciously do whatever it takes to realize their goals. They've spent countless eons scheming to drag the multiverse toward the pole of evil, and they've laid their webs in every corner of the planes. They love nothing more than a challenge, and they seek out and annihilate any and all challenges to the supremacy of their guiding force. As a Yugoloth of conspiracy and control, with an uncanny patience and fiendish cunning, Ultroloths manipulate mortals and their fellow fiends alike, seeking to hoard power and spread suffering. These sinister masterminds often work with other Yugoloths, but they might compel nearly any creature into their service. If coercion doesn't work, Ultroloths use their eerie eyes and innate magic to hypnotize or charm targets. Befitting their appearance, Ultroloths were also utterly unpredictable, their alien minds seemingly exhibiting an existential paradox. They were filled with passion for their ambitions and deep hatred for their opposition, yet behaved detached and emotionless. Although the Ultroloths are the highest-ranking members of their race, they're physically indistinguishable from one another. The only differences are in how they dress and how they seek to pursue Yugoloth interests. These fiends provide the vision that guides the race. They're the secret source of all modern Loth scheming, and no doubt, all past scheming as well. In the eons it takes for their kind to ascend to this lofty rank, it learns to spin its webs far and wide. As a result, Many folks fear Ultroloths on the basis of their knowledge alone. Their contacts, supposedly, span even the prime material and the inner planes, and the forces an Ultroloth can bring to bear on a foe can be as mild as a message and as mighty as the destruction of a planet. Ultroloths are the elite officers in Yugoloth armies, leading troops and disrupting enemy plans. In the competitive environment of Gehenna, they're frequently at one another's throats, and they continually scheme to enhance their power. They have a well-deserved reputation for cruelty and often linger over fallen foes, taunting and torturing them rather than granting them a quick death. Many wear the severed fingers of their victims on grisly necklaces and rarely engage in a stand-up fight themselves, leaving such work to their minions. An Ultraloth is a robed humanoid with an elongated head that is faceless and featureless, beyond two large eyes that swirl with color. Its skin is a mottled dark grey. Tall and thin, an Ultraloth usually stands 6 feet tall and weighs 160 pounds. Surprising to few, these fiends are every bit as greedy and rapacious as their meso-demon warriors. They broker lopsided deals with other factions and sell their services in exchange for exorbitant sums, magic items, and dire favors. These fiends are found among all kinds of demons and powerful humanoids, but they are rarely loyal to those creatures. An Ultraloth's arrangement is never binding. It turns against its employer when a deal ceases to be profitable. The Ultraloth is a mastermind, working to twist events to its benefit. The fiend orchestrates the battle, while allies form a guard around the creature. The schemer lashes out at its enemies' minds while driving allies to attack quickly and brutally. When an enemy presses it, it strikes out with its longsword and then walks safely away while the attacker is reeling from the impact. Many of these schemers avoid battle unless they cannot escape, or unless the battle is necessary to achieve its long-range goals. If a fight sours, it abandons the scene, bringing only its favorite allies with it. They order its expendable troops to delay enemies until it has safely retreated. Like other fiends, most Yugoloths also have the ability to gate or portal in their comrades. I say most, dear reader, because Yugoloths are too widely hated by the other members of their race to gate in allies for a fight. However, most Yugoloths take poorly to this sort of peremptory summoning, and if the gated fiend is as powerful as the one who summoned it, chances are fairly good that a struggle will ensue. Naturally, Ultraloths need never fear such an unpleasant surprise. When they gate in a Yugoloth, the summoned fiend knows that it had better obey. The actual power of an Ultraloth, while certainly respectable, is not all that much greater than others of their kind. However, no fiend of lesser power knows the capabilities of these rulers. They are an unknown quantity and thus greatly feared. The best way to deal with the Yugoloths is to keep out of their knowledge. See, the Loths think killing mortals is a waste of resources. They'd much rather peel the sods into carrying out their dark plans for them. That way, if a scheme ever comes to light, the mortals are likely to take the blame. And even though plenty of folks know how sneaky the Yugoloths are, they still fall for the fiendish tricks more often than not. It seems that Loths just have an uncanny knack for appealing to a mortal's greed, ego, sense of self-preservation, and the like. You name it, they'll take advantage of it. Finally, Ultraloths can give birth all on their own, without having to mate. But their offspring are always young Arcanoloths, who, like the young of Arcanoloth parents, end up filling more mundane roles in the Loth hierarchy. Why don't Ultraloths produce Ultraloths? Sages think it's because their state of existence is pure status, pure reward. A fiend's really got to work its head off in order to reach the top of the chain. It can't just be born there. Truth to tell, the Yugoloths would like to impose that rule across the board. See, the leaders of the race discourage mating. Sure, it increases the number of Loths in the multiverse, but the high-ups don't want to fill the ranks with inexperienced fiends. They only want the best and the brightest in positions of power. And the only way to get that is through centuries of striving and promotion. Most folks call Ultroloths carnivores and let it sit at that. But that ain't the whole story. And it's an oversimplification to just say that they eat meat. First off, Loths relish in the taking of life. Meat is more than food for them. Eating, it's a symbolic gesture of contempt toward the rest of the multiverse. See, Ultroloths consider themselves to be at the top of any food chain, and they want every being in existence to know of their arrogance. And Ultroloths, well, they chew up all of their victims. They take pain and love, glee and anger. It's a good thing the powers and gods watch over their petitioners, or else the Ultroloths would devour every being they came across, body and soul. A prefatory flourish, lest you mistake prudence for fear. Dearest readers, you already know who it is. Thy indefatigable lantern-bearer, Volothamp Gedarm, who treads the cinder lips of Blood Rift, where the river of blood soars a mile-deep canyon through a plain that weds 9 hells to abyss, and calls the honeymoon the Blood War. Here, Ultroloths, grey masters of mercenary malice, hire out countless of their kind by the regiment and hedge it with clauses sharp enough to shave a pit fiend. Today's study, in Thrasis, necromancer, ruler of Corpse Haven, commander of the Black Horn Regiment, and a fellow who kept spare copies of himself the way sensible folk keep spare breeches. Volo's Guide to Ultroloths. Chapter 1. In Thrasis of Corpse Haven. Corpse Haven sat on the steep side of Kalas, largest of the Rift's volcanoes, a 3-story library fortress, shelved with a plentiful selection of arcane tomes, but also with bodies. Thousands of foes and failures, magically preserved at the exact brink of death, semi-sentient, decaying, and moaning in slow unison. He had decided on what was to him a simple amusement. Demons, devils, Ultroloths, mortals, all mortared into corridors. Thracis claimed it sharpened his focus. Beyond the groaning stacks stretch barren plains, rocky badlands, mesas, box canyons, terrain purpose-built for ambushes and manipulations. Ultroloths do specialize in that art form. A brief respite. I would also note if you are thinking of engaging a plan with one of these beings. I would advise you not to. You will never have the upper hand. I repeat to you, dear reader, never. An Ultroloth, for any who may not be acquainted, is a Ultroloth, perfected to their kind's ice-cool calculus. An ashen hide, lamp-bright eyes, a face smoothed by evolution. Don't let them hear me say this, but perhaps a little too round for my tastes. They lead, they bargain. Thrasis added necromancy to the portfolio and kept clones decanted, labelled, and ready. Should one body end badly, his contingency spell would place his form back into one of these clones, ready for his next scheme. Some of the more well-informed of you may state, Volo, all Ultroloths reappear with a new form once destroyed. And to that I say, you are most correct. However, Thracis had preferences for his form, and wisest of all his decisions, he had a solution if he was caught unaware in Gehenna. His Black Horn Regiment, 500 strong, fielded every flavour of Ultroloth, Mesoloth phalanxes, Durgoloth shockers, Nikoloth flyers, Canoloth hounds, with Arcanoloths at the quills, and guiding the machinations of the Blood War. It was a simple game in their eyes. Play both sides of the Blood War against one another, as they rise in both power and arcane mastery. Among the latter fiends mentioned, one Nizviim, an enchanter Arcanoloth bound close because Thracis knew his true name. Dear reader, if you are also unfamiliar, a fiend's true name is a secret that, if known, grants power over that creature, allowing the being that has that knowledge to control it or summon it for their service. Think of a butler who you don't have to pay a copper for. Chapter 2. Veeron's Errand. In 1373, Dr, a god whose shadow wears a smirk, Veeron, masked god of night, the Shadow, and, less frequently, the Shadow Lord. The Drow Patron was an arrogant advocate of equality, at least within his so-called race. He approached Enthrachis, his command if you wish to call it that. Kill the 3 priestesses vying to be Yorthai, chosen of Lolth, Quenthel Benre, Danife Yantir, Halistra Melan. The reward, a higher station, which to a Yugoloth reads as better leverage and larger control over both those of their kind, within the lower planes, and for Enthrachis, timeless control of Corpse Haven. Enthrachis marched by hell roads to the demon web pits, coming to the pass of the Soul Reaver and the plains of Soulfire, a horizon of embers that burns souls with a vast expanse of blackened stone, and typical to Lolth, web-like formations. Within the pits, the Black Horn met Quenthel's company. Quenthel herself, Danife, Halistra, Jegrid Banre, a loyal horror, and Pharaon Mizrim. Quenthel called a great demon as one might hail a carriage within Waterdeep. Unfortunately for her, the payment was a touch more dear. Danife lifted her hands, and millions of spiders answered. Lolth had no time for interference from both one Drow patron, who she perceived as a lesser, and some Ultraloth nuisance. Enthrachis moved his pieces, his company, with an Ultraloth precision. The Yugoloth engaged his strongest Yugoloths against their weakest warriors. He had a battlemaster's understanding of combat, pushed through the weaker formations for a flanking maneuver. He positioned the Nikoloths, his wings to the flank, his form of elite cavalry. As he used them to protect the flanks, his main force punctured through the front line of the Drow. The rift itself held its breath as the outcome was soon to be decided. Then Pharaon took Enthrachis in combat alone. Spells were formed by both the Drow and the Ultraloth. Enthrachis landed a few curses that slowed Pharaon. Counterspells unbraided. Necromancy met an artistry of the weave. Vast hordes of undead attempted to keep the Drow pinned, but were routinely dispatched by lightning bolts strewn from a black iron wand Pharaon held. When the workings of arcane mastery had bested the Ultraloth and the battle settled, Enthrachis fell, while Pharaon stood proud. A repugnant ichor formed as Enthrachis dissipated. This moment of victory was short-lived, as Pharaon noticed an eye raise from the Ultraloth that could only have been seen as a sly cunning. Within a few moments, he stood still, petrified by his own cleverness, the stone of his form blossoming across him, akin to a grey ivy. His ring's stubborn magic flew him back to Quenthel, his ego tarnished. With the fiend's apparent dying smirk, if you could call it that, promised he experienced the last laugh. Chapter 3. Death Deferred. Killed is not the same as ended. One floor down, a clone's eyes opened. Enthrachis drew his first new breath back in Corpse Haven, the walls welcoming him with their practiced pain and corruption. He stood upon a balcony hammered into Kal As's black glass and overlooked the blood war, devils and demons scything one another. The faceless Ultraloths, a more apt form than most folks realise, are some of the most feared creatures in the entire multiverse. What this lesson, dearest reader, I hope has taught, is that few rarely succeed in total victory against their kind. Though certain Batazu, demons, and Solars could certainly possess powers that are stronger in the traditional sense, it's said that few have longer reaches than the Ultraloths, and fewer still can hide their knowledge from these ruthless fiends. So Enthrachis reigned on in late 14th century DR, in his 3-story mortuary of ideas and schemes, turning pages with a typical existential paradox of his kind, watching the rift like a bookmaker watches a crooked race that he held each bet on. He held no loyalty to any devil, any demon, and least of all to those of his own kind. A paradox of passion, for his own diabolical ambition fueled him, and with the self-contradictory nature of a paradox, this was balanced with a deep hatred for all that did not serve him. And gentles, he even hated some that did. As Intrichis peered over the third level of his fortress, several thousand larvae squirmed beneath. He pondered. Souls. The larvae trade was one way he could control the stations of countless devil and demon princes. His next machination was articulated quickly within his mind, and this one would surely gain a future in his ghastly, hedonistic designs. Dear reader, as always, it has been a delight and simple pleasure recounting one of the infamous tales from the one and only Volothump Gedam. Power. What a fascinating concept, wouldn't you agree? We all crave it, but only a select few of us really deserve it. The parchment, the quill, and the mind need rest. So let us finally place our quills up for the evening and recount a simple scripture of the Ultroloths. Most of all, fear the Ultroloths. They are masks of mystery, and no matter how many layers of skin you peel away, you will never know how many still lie between you and the true face. Spawned on the grey waste, the very heart of evil, and nourished on Gehenna, the very forge of unforgiving brutality. The Ultroloth race is notorious for the ill ends to which it applies its manipulative genius. Pray that their plans, whatever they may be, never come to fruition.